What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction. Back with some more Benny, Bjorn, and Tim Rice and the soundtrack / musical Chess from 1984. Thank you again to Robert. And the next track is The Russian and Molokov and Where I Want to Be. So I don't know if that means it's a medley where it's two songs, one leading directly into the other, or whether there's, let's say, a non-musical section followed by an actual song. Either way, I feel like this is very specific, meaning given the way that the album started, and I realized the press conference track people mentioned wasn't on the initial release but then was included like in a later expanded or deluxe edition, and given the way the opening couple tracks set a very specific stage, I feel like these song titles are going to be less conceptual, less broadly applicable, but more specific to the program or narrative of the musical. So I'll just try to catch what I can on a first listen. This is Benny and Bjorn with Tim Rice and their soundtrack musical Chess, and the track is The Russian and Molokov / Where I Want to Be.
The man is utterly mad! You're playing a lunatic.
That's the problem. He's a brilliant lunatic. You can't tell which way he'll jump. Like his game, he's impossible to analyze. You can't dissect him, predict him, which of course means he's not a lunatic at all.
What we've just seen is a pathetic display from a man who's beginning to crack. He's afraid. He knows he isn't the player he was, and he won't get it back.
Nonsense. Why do my seconds always want to believe third-rate propaganda?
My friend, please relax. We're all on your side. You know how you need us.
I don't need my army of so-called advisors and helpers to tell me the man who's revitalized chess single-handed is more or less out of his brain. When it's very clear he's safe.
Listen, we don't underestimate anyone. We won't get caught in that trap. After all, winning or losing reflects on us all.
Oh, don't give me that crap. I win, no one else does. I take the rap if I lose.
It's not quite that simple. The whole world's tuned in, we're all on display. We're not merely sportsmen.
Oh, please don't start spouting that old party line. Yes, I know it's your job, but just get out and get me a chess playing second. In 36 hours we begin. That is if you want to win. Who needs a dream? Who needs ambition? Who'd be the fool in my position? Once I had dreams, now they're obsessions. Hopes became needs, lovers' possessions. Then they move in oh, so discreetly, slowly at first, smiling too sweetly, I opened doors. They walked right through them, called me their friend. I hardly knew them. Now I'm where I wanna be and who I wanna be and doing what I always said I would, and yet I feel I haven't what I own. Running for my life and never looking back in case there's someone right behind to shoot me down and say you always knew I'd fall. When the crazy wheel slows down, where will I be? Back where I started. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. Times have been good, fast, entertaining. But what's the point if I'm concealing not only love, all other feeling? Now I'm where I wanna be and who I wanna be and doing what I always said I would, and yet I feel I haven't what I own. Running for my life and never looking back in case there's someone right behind to shoot me down and say you always knew I'd fall. When the crazy wheel slows down, where will I be? Back where I started.
Fascinating. So definitely a two-part track. The first track I feel like, or the first part of that medley, I think I understand a bit better, though I suppose it was still a bit ambiguous in terms of how it relates to the second track to me on this first listen. Meaning the first track is clearly the chess player talking to a party operative who is trying to cast this as part of, like, you know, one conceptual battle in the larger Cold War struggle between East and West, between Soviet Union and Europe/North America, and saying to, I think, the Russian player that, look, you know, when you go out there, you're representing all of us. If you win, we all win. If you lose, we all lose. And, you know, you shouldn't forget that, and that should be framed in your mind. And he's saying, no, it's not like that. If I win, I'm the one who won. And, you know, everyone in the party and beyond, they didn't do that. Like, that's me. And if I lose, I'm the only one who's going to bear that responsibility, get scapegoated or blamed. So, you know, they're not going to be holding on to that either. So there seems to be a debate between the actual player and the party representative, whether, you know, the GRU or whatever, who's trying to frame this as a political fight. But then there was also that dialogue about, like, he's not the player he used to be, and then there was another opinion, like, no, I disagree, and, you know, he still has it, he's still, you know, ahead, and he's still thinking in ways, and like, his game is so unpredictable that it's hard to play against, and that actually means he's not crazy, he's a genius. So there seem to be some different opinions about the player in question. And then the second part made me wonder, like, is he defecting? Is that why what was the run of lines that, like, I'm, trying to keep running as fast as I can. I'm not even going to look behind me to see if someone's going to shoot me in the back. So it sounded like maybe like once this person gets to this international chess tournament, they're using it as a springboard to try to defect. And if that's the case, I think we're probably still talking about the Russian or Soviet player who's trying to escape from this geopolitical dynamic, or at least the controlling forces on his side of the Cold War, and to use this as a personal escape, whatever his involvement in the chess legitimately was up until that point. But I don't know if I'm reading that right. And the idea about, you're back to where you started doesn't necessarily seem to fit with that, unless, of course, your plan is foiled and you don't get to defect. So I don't know if I'm reading the whole second part correctly, but it sounds, if you're saying you're where you want to be, who you want to be, doing what you want to be doing, then it sounds like you are at some opportunity. So whether that's to defect or whether that's to succeed and to prove that, your chess, your skill in this competition is superior, I'm not quite positive about. But either way, I enjoyed the sort of dark tension, especially of the second half of the track. It really had this, these wicked forces, or this, not discordant, but it had a, like minor key or like tension-filled atmosphere to the second half. Excuse me. So the first half felt a bit more, like we're watching a, not quite recitative, because it was, they were singing, but it felt like we were watching a dialogue part of a musical or an opera. So, I'm focused on what the characters are saying to each other. In the second part of it, I was hearing the music and the melodic drama of it a bit more, and perhaps that's why I'm not quite sure what was happening lyrically in the second half, even if, again, there's one of a couple possibilities that stood out to me. But very compelling, and again, I know there were a couple people who talked about, like, something that Tim and Benny and Bjorn wished had been done was, like, people had programs, or that there were, like, subtitles, or, basically a clear indication of what's being said, because some of the words, maybe not as much as in that press conference track, which again I get wasn't part of the original chronology of the musical, but was inserted or included later. But it's still, it's a lot of informational singing and words that come in a relatively quick fashion. So I get, like, on a first time listen, and the way that I do these things, where I'm not looking at a lyric sheet and I'm just trying to digest everything and think about it, and then over time, I'd re-listen to it. Although, again, as I do these deep dives and as my channel has grown, I tend to get a lot of information through comments, so that even by the time I'm going to hear the tune a second time, I've got some context and wherewithal to hear specific pieces that maybe eluded me on a first listen. But nevertheless, it's hard for me to catch everything in that first listen. So yes, I'm getting sketches and hints of this larger musical narrative, but I will look forward to hearing people comment. Do let me know what you think. And Luca and I, you can sit in the chair, you don't have to jump down. In any case, we shall see you next time. Peace.